Hey guys, and welcome to Idahoflylife. Today we're going to be tying the Chubby Chernobyl. Now the Chubby Chernobyl is a dry fly, and it is an attractor pattern, a very, very effective attractor pattern. Pretty much any fly fisherman that you meet will have this in their box, provided they fish foam flies. But it does do a great job of imitating a grasshopper, also does a great job of imitating like a golden stonefly, a salmon fly tied in purple. This is a fantastic fly. Now the hook I have in the vise is a Firehole Sticks hook. Any 2 extra long Nymph hook or dry fly hook is going to work. I just like the Firehole hooks because they're barbless. I don't fish a barb ever, and that hook point is extremely sharp. So you go ahead and start your thread here and wrap in touching spiral wraps back to where the hook barb should be. Again, these are barbless hooks, so you'll have to guess, but you're halfway between basically the bend in that rear of the hook and the point. First material we're going to tie in is Krystal flash. You can see here it's about 10 strands. We're going to tie it in right at that barb point and then wrap forward over the butt ends. This gives a very, very secure connection to that Krystal flash. And we'll go ahead and wrap back again right to where you tied in the Krystal flash, and then give one wrap behind that Krystal flash to kind of prop it up and put it in line with the hook shank. Now the next material that we're going to use, and all of the specific materials are going to be in the description down below. This is SLF Prism dubbing, and I'm going to dub this whole fly before we go any further. Now I'll start at the very back of the hook after I've built a fairly thin noodle for a Chubby Chernobyl, and then we'll wrap forward with touching wraps on that dubbing. Now you're going to have to redub 4 or 5 times pretty easily. I think I get away with 4 here, but don't concern yourself too much with how many times you have to redub the thread. That's completely fine. It's not going to hurt anything. Just try and make it pretty consistently even as you wrap forward. Now, see, I didn't quite get the Krystal flash butt ends completely covered, but the dubbing does a fantastic job of that. And when we get to the front of the hook, this is a little bit different than other flies. We're going to redub back over the top of the dubbing we've already laid to get a thicker body. There is a reason that this fly is called a Chubby Chernobyl. It does have a very thick dub body. And this is how this is accomplished, with basically overlapping your dubbing. All right. We'll wrap back. And now it's kind of got a little bit of a football shape, not quite as pronounced, but that's what I like in a chubby, to have that football shape. And you're basically going to stop your thread at the 1/3 mark and grab your pre-cut foam. You'll lay your foam, take a few wraps, the first wrap being loose, and then you'll progressively get tighter. What I like to do here, after I've gotten that foam set on that hook the way I like it, is I'll make a little space, and I'm moving forward with the thread. I'll make a little space to tie in the rubber legs and to tie in the polypropylene, the white polypropylene yarn. So now that you've got that little space created with the thread, we're going to go ahead and tie in our first rubber leg. Now you'll notice I tie this in a little bit high, give it a couple wraps, and then the beauty of rubber legs is you can actually stretch them to get them to go where you want. In this video, you're going to see several times where I stretch these rubber legs in different ways to try and manipulate them to the shape that I want. You don't have to do that as much if you don't mind where the rubber legs are facing, but I am a stickler for this. I try and get my rubber legs perfect every time. Not that it always works out, but that's what I like to do. So same thing, I flipped the hook, and I'm now tying in this second rubber leg. And I'll do the exact same thing on that side. I will try and manipulate those legs to a position that I like them in, leaving those rubber legs long. All the trimming on this fly, other than, maybe a general trim, you'll see me shorten up these legs here in just a moment. But all of the trimming on this fly is done after all of the materials have been tied in, secured, and the fly has been whip finished. So the next step here is to tie in the parachute post. Now this is probably polypropylene yarn, that I've pulled off of a card. Kind of looks like a chenille card, but with yarn on it. Now a tip on this is before you go to tie this material in, it's great to take the hook side of hook and loop or the hook side of Velcro, if you have a small square of it, and run it along that yarn after you've cut it off the shank. The reason for that is it gives it this nice fluffy appearance that you see here. And then I've tied it in the middle, and I've gone back over the top so it will lay flat. Now the next step will be to dub back over this bump that we've just created. There's a big bump of thread there. This is going to help that polypropylene yarn lay back a little bit nicer, as well as cover up all of the thread wraps that we've just taken. And this will be a pretty thick noodle. Should get 2 or 3 wraps out of it here. But you'll see afterwards that yarn does lay very flat. Now after you've dubbed over that section, you want to advance your thread in front of the foam. Add just a little bit of dubbing so that you can't see a really pronounced rib from the thread in there. And then wrap forward. And this is about to the 1/3 mark on this hook. Now you can go a little bit ahead of this, a little bit behind this, but you want to get it close. And then we'll tie that foam in the same way we did on the back, except instead of advancing our thread forward, we're going to advance it backward. Now we're basically going to rinse and repeat here. So I'm going to tie one rubber leg in on the near side of the hook, but it gets a little bit more complicated. You do have to start moving materials out of the way. Those rubber legs will hang out in front of you. So I'm brushing everything back with my left hand and tying that rubber leg in. That one looks pretty good. We're going to move on to the next one. Same procedure. We'll brush the rear rubber legs back, and then we'll tie this front rubber leg in with 2 wraps. Take that 1 wrap, adjust your leg to where you want it, secure it again. And then I'm going to wrap over these a few times, making sure that they are secured and in place where I want them. Go ahead and flip that fly back over. And the whole process on these chubbies is really adjusting those rubber legs is kind of key. You'll see I spend a lot of time on that. I like these flies to look as perfect as I can get them, really, because I'm the one that has to look at them in the fly box. I don't think the fish care. You could probably catch fish either way, but it's just something that I like to do. So same thing again, we'll tie in that polypropylene yarn. A little bit more here. You've got to brush everything out of the way and wrap back over that yarn and fold the front piece of the yarn back over the top of the rear piece of yarn and secure it. And it shouldn't take a ton of wraps. You should be able to get away with 3 or 4 wraps right over the top. And then we'll go to the dubbing. Now I'm going to readjust these legs, I'm sure, again here. Just trying to get everything perfect. It's probably not as important as I'm making it seem. I'm spending a lot of time adjusting legs. However, I like my flies the way I like my flies. And I'm sure you do the same thing. Whatever way you like your fly, it's going to work just fine. Now I've got just the smallest amount of dubbing here. I'm going to start with a small amount to get that covered up. Make sure my legs are splitting the way that I like them. It does look like they are here for the most part. I'll come back and adjust at the very end. Add a little bit more dubbing to cover up the nub that I made on that polypropylene yarn right at the front of that tie-in point, right there. And after that's done, I'm going to brush everything back and go to the head. Now I have 2 or 3 turns on the head just to secure everything, lock it into place. And then I'll come in and whip finish. Now the whip finish procedure on this one is a little bit more difficult. You do have to use your left hand to sweep everything back and then whip finish this fly. And there's a 6 or 7 turn whip finish here. I'll come in, cut out my tying thread. I don't actually put head cement on this fly. I haven't had one completely come apart on me yet. Not saying that it won't happen, but I haven't had it happen yet. Now you come and lift that foam up and then snip that foam so you have a little bit of a head beyond where your eye of your hook is. And then I snip a triangle out of it here and try and round it off. Now, I'm not the best with this particular portion of scissor work. You can cut it a little bit less than I did here. I'm sure you can make it look prettier than I did. The head of this one doesn't really bother me that much though. As long as it's in the relative shape of a grasshopper head, I'm happy with it. So at this point, we'll make all of our final adjustments on the legs. And then I'm going to cut those legs to about a hook shank in length, maybe a little bit less, but don't go too far less. This is the weirdest looking fly if you cut the legs too short, and you won't get the same action in the water that you otherwise would. So what I did there is I measured the first leg, and I'm coming in, I cut that first leg, and then I'm kind of eyeballing the rest of these legs to cut them to the size of that first leg. I may come back through and trim those legs up just a little bit more. You can always trim these legs on the water if you're not happy with them. Next step would be to cut this Krystal flash to length, and you're looking at just a hair beyond the end of your foam. Same thing with your wing on this fly, which is that polypropylene yarn. Cut that basically right at the back edge of your foam. Now this should be what the completed fly looks like. I'll give you a 360 degree view here of the fly. See, those wings are pretty much even. The head, I'll admit I could have done a little bit better job in cleaning up, but you can do that as well. If you want to take a little bit more time with that, this fly will fish. And again, thanks for watching the video, guys. I really appreciate you. If you would, please hit that like button. Please subscribe, ring the bell. It really helps me out. Thank you for watching Idahoflylife. Hope you enjoyed this tie. Have a great day.